The ultimatum, the silence in the command center was deafening. Admiral Sarah Shun stood before the massive holographic display, watching as dozens of alien vessels materialized at the edge of the Sol system. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, sleek, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, each one easily 3 times the size of Earth's largest dreadnought. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, his voice tight with tension. "It's coming from the lead vessel." Chun nodded grimly. "Put it through." The hologram flickered, and suddenly the command center was filled with the imposing presence of Overlord Krikstal. The Zephyrian leader stood nearly 10 feet tall, his scaled skin shimmering with an oily rainbow sheen. 4 arms extended from his torso, each ending in razor-sharp claws, while his reptilian head bore 6 eyes that glowed with an inner fire. "Primitive humans," Krikstal's voice boomed through the speakers, each word dripping with contempt. "I am Overlord Krikstal of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been evaluated, and you have been found adequate for our purposes." Chun kept her expression neutral, though her hands clenched into fists behind her back. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. State your business in our system." A harsh sound that might have been laughter emanated from the alien leader. "Your system? How amusing. You inhabit a few rocks orbiting a mediocre star, and you believe you possess sovereignty?" His multiple eyes focused on Chun with predatory intensity. "We have conquered 17 civilizations across this galaxy. Each thought themselves mighty. Each learned otherwise. What do you want?" Chun asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Submission," Krikstal replied without hesitation. "Your species will serve the Zephyrian Empire. Your worlds will become our mining colonies. Your people will labor for our glory. In return, we will allow you to continue existing." The command center erupted in angry murmurs, but Chun raised her hand for silence. "And if we refuse?" "Then you will join the Catharian civilization in extinction. Perhaps you've heard of them? No? They once controlled 12 star systems. Now they control none, because none of them remain alive." Behind Chun, Dr. Marcus Webb stepped forward. The elderly physicist had been humanity's chief strategist for the past decade, and his presence at this meeting was no coincidence. "Overlord, Krikstal, surely a civilization as advanced as yours understands the value of willing cooperation over forced servitude?" Krikstal's attention shifted to Webb, and something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "Ah, the old one speaks wisdom. Indeed, willing slaves are more productive than unwilling ones. But make no mistake, the choice is between servitude and death. There is no third option." "How long do we have to consider your offer?" Chun asked. "Generous as always. We grant you 72 of your hours," Krikstal replied. "Deploy your fastest vessels to spread word to your colonies. When the time expires, we will begin pacification operations. Those who surrender will be spared. Those who resist will provide examples to others." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Chun turned to face her assembled staff, seeing fear and determination warring in their faces. "Status report," she ordered. "Their fleet composition is unlike anything in our databases," reported Commander Torres, the fleet's tactical officer. "Preliminary scans suggest their smallest ships pack more firepower than our battleships. Their largest ... double quotes." He paused, shaking his head. "Ma'am, their flagship could probably glass a continent. Numbers? 47 vessels detected so far, with more arriving every hour. They're establishing a perimeter around the entire system." Chun looked to Webb, who had remained quiet during the exchange. "Doctor, your assessment?" The old man's eyes were distant, calculating. They're not bluffing about their military superiority, but they made one critical error. Which is, they assumed we'd react like every other species they've encountered. Fight conventionally, lose, and either surrender or die. Webb's lips curved into a thin smile. They don't understand that humans have a talent for unconventional solutions. Are you suggesting we can fight them? I'm suggesting we don't have to. Webb moved to the display, manipulating the hologram to show the Zephyrian fleet's formation. Notice their positioning. They're not just blockading us, they're containing us. They want to ensure none of our ships escape to warn other civilizations. Chun frowned. How does that help us? Because it means their entire fleet is committed to this system. And that makes them vulnerable to a very specific type of attack. Webb's expression grew serious. Admiral, I need to brief you on Project Stellar. Cascade. The name sent a chill through the room. Stellar Cascade was one of humanity's most classified projects, known only to a handful of people. Chun herself had only heard whispers. Classified briefing room. Now, she ordered. Minutes later, Chun sat across from Webb in the shielded briefing chamber, her mind reeling from what she'd just learned. You're telling me we can destroy their entire star system? She asked. Not just their star system, Webb corrected. Any star system. The technology manipulates stellar fusion processes, creating a cascade reaction that destabilizes the star's core. The resulting supernova would eliminate everything within a 15 light-year radius. And you've tested this? Simulations only. But the theory is sound. We've been preparing for the possibility of facing an extinction-level threat. Chun leaned back in her chair. The Zephyrian's home system, do we know where it is? Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking their fleet's origin point. The Zephyr system, approximately 47 light-years from here. 7 inhabited planets, population estimated at 12 billion. The weight of what Webb was suggesting settled over Chun like a shroud. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about survival, Webb replied quietly. They've made it clear serve or die. Those are the only options they've given us. There has to be another way, perhaps. But we need to be prepared for the possibility that there isn't. Webb leaned forward. Admiral, they've exterminated entire civilizations. The Catharians weren't warriors. They were artists, philosophers, poets. The Zephyrians wiped them out because they valued their independence over their lives. Asterisk Chun closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her species' future pressing down on her. When she opened them again, her resolve had hardened. How long would it take to prepare the weapon? The delivery system is already in place. We've had deep space probes positioned near potential threat systems for years. It would take 36 hours to transmit the activation codes and initiate the sequence. And they'd never see it coming? The probes are designed to be undetectable. They've been in position for 3 years, disguised as space debris. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late to stop. Chun stood, pacing to the small window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet waited for humanity's answer. And somewhere else, billions of Zephyrian civilians lived their lives, unaware that their leaders had just signed their death warrants. There's something else, Webb said softly. The Zephyrians aren't just threatening us. Intelligence suggests they're planning a systematic conquest of this entire galactic arm. Hundreds of civilizations, trillions of lives. How do you know that? Because they told us. Their ambassador mentioned 17 conquered civilizations, but our analysis of their fleet composition suggests they've been active for much longer. They're not just an empire, they're a plague. Chun turned back to face him. If we do this, we become something we've never been before. We become survivors, Webb replied. The question is whether we can live with ourselves afterward. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, then activated her communicator. This is Admiral Chun to all department heads. Prepare for Operation Stellar Cascade. Authorization code Alpha 77 Omega. As the order went out, Chun found herself thinking about the children in the schools of New Geneva, the farmers on Mars, the miners in the asteroid belt, all of them sleeping peacefully, unaware that their lives hung in the balance of a decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Asterisk the Zephyrians had given them 72 hours to choose between servitude and death. They hadn't considered the possibility that humanity might choose something else entirely. The message was already traveling through space toward the Zephyr system, carrying with it the seeds of stellar destruction. In 36 hours, the Zephyrians would learn what happened when you threatened the survival of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through sheer stubborn determination. They had wanted war with humans. They were about to discover that when humanity went to war, they didn't just defeat their enemies, they erased them from existence. The final solution 60 hours had passed since the Zephyrian ultimatum. The alien fleet had grown to nearly 100 vessels, forming an impenetrable blockade around the Sol system. On the surface of Earth, emergency broadcasts urged calm, while secretly, military installations worked around the clock to evacuate key personnel to deep bunkers. Admiral Chun stood in the primary war room, surrounded by her senior staff. The holographic display showed real-time feeds from across human space. Every colony, every outpost, every ship was accounted for. In 12 hours, the Zephyrian deadline would expire. Status report on Operation Stellar Cascade. Chun ordered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the project's lead scientist, looked up from her console with exhausted eyes. She had barely slept since the mission began. The probe has successfully infiltrated the Zephyr system's primary star. All systems are operational and awaiting final authorization. How long until detonation once we give the order? 47 minutes for the signal to reach the probe, then approximately 18 minutes for the cascade reaction to reach critical mass. Total time, 65 minutes. Chun nodded grimly. And our evacuation plans? Captain Torres stepped forward. All civilian vessels had been prepared for emergency dispersal. If the Zephyrians detect what we're doing and retaliate before the cascade takes effect, we can scatter the population across 1,000 different vectors. Some will survive. Some, Chun repeated, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. Admiral, Webb interrupted, looking up from his communication station. We're receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. Put it through. Overlord. Krikstal appeared in the hologram, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Ambassador Velther, a smaller Zephyrian with more delicate features and only 2 arms. Chun had studied the intelligence files. Velther was considered a moderate among the Zephyrian leadership. Humans, Krikstal began, your time grows short. Have you reached a decision? Shen stepped forward. We have. But first, I have a question for Ambassador Velther. The ambassador looked surprised, but inclined his head slightly. You may ask. In your conquests of 17 civilizations, was surrender ever truly an option? Or did you always plan to exterminate them eventually? Velther's expression was unreadable, but he glanced at Krikstal before responding. The Empire requires efficiency. Conquered species that prove troublesome are often reorganized. Reorganized, Chun repeated. You mean killed? Admiral Chun, Krikstal interjected, his voice sharp with impatience. Philosophical discussions are irrelevant. Submit or be destroyed. Choose now. Chun looked around the room at her officers, seeing the same determination reflected in each face that she felt in her own heart. We choose neither. Explain. We choose to teach you why threatening humanity was the worst mistake your empire ever made. Chun's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with cold fire. You see, Overlord, You've made a fundamental error in your calculations. Krixtal's 6 eyes narrowed. You dare threaten the Zephyrian Empire? Not threaten, promise. Chun moved closer to the hologram. You assumed we were like the other species you've conquered. You thought we'd fight conventionally, lose, and either surrender or die gloriously in battle. But humans don't think like that. Your fleet is primitive, Krixtal snarled. Your weapons are crude toys compared to our technology. You're absolutely right, Chun agreed. In a conventional battle, you'd destroy us without breaking stride. That's why we didn't plan a conventional battle. She gestured to Dr. Tanaka, who activated a new display showing the Zephyr System 7 planets orbiting a brilliant yellow star. Beautiful system, Chun observed. I understand it's been your species' home for over 10,000 years. Rich history, magnificent cities, billions of civilians living peaceful lives. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Krixtal's expression. What are you implying? 3 years ago, when our deep space monitors first detected signs of an aggressive expanding empire in this sector, we began preparations. One of those preparations was positioning undetectable probes near potential threat systems. The display zoomed in on the Zephyr System star, highlighting a tiny object barely visible against the stellar surface. That probe has been embedded in your sun's chromosphere for 18 months, Chun continued. It's designed to destabilize the fusion process and trigger a supernova. The blast will sterilize everything within 15 light years of your homeworld. The silence from the Zephyrian ship was deafening. Finally, Ambassador Velther spoke, his voice barely a whisper. You're bluffing. No species would commit such an atrocity. You've committed atrocities against 17 civilizations, Webb interjected, stepping into view. You've murdered trillions. You've eliminated entire cultures, entire ways of thinking. And now you want to add humanity to that list. The difference, Sean added, is that those civilizations tried to fight you with honor. We're going to fight you with mathematics. Krixtal's rage was building, his scaled skin shifting to deeper, more ominous colors. If you trigger that weapon, you'll be no better than the monsters you claim we are. No, Chun replied quietly. We'll be survivors. And the galaxy will be free of a plague that's been spreading across it for centuries. You cannot do this. Velther stepped forward, his composure cracking. There are civilians, children, innocents, who have never participated in conquest. Just like the children on the 17 worlds you've sterilized? Chun's voice remained steady. Tell me, Ambassador, how many Catharian children begged for their lives before your forces killed them? The Zephyrian diplomat had no answer. However, Chun continued, we're not entirely without mercy. You have exactly 1 hour to order every Zephyrian ship to leave human space and return to your homeworld. Once your fleet is clear, we'll give you 72 hours to evacuate your system, the same amount of time you gave us to surrender. Evacuate billions of people? Krixtal's voice cracked with disbelief. That's impossible. Your empire spans dozens of systems, Webb pointed out. You have the ships. The question is whether you value Zephyrian lives as much as you claim to value Zephyrian honor. Chun turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant, open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels in the system. Channel open, Admiral. Attention Zephyrian Fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. You are hereby ordered to immediately depart human space and return to your homeworld. You have 58 minutes to comply. Any vessel remaining in this system after that time will be considered hostile and will share the fate of your entire civilization. She nodded to the communications officer, who cut the transmission to the fleet while maintaining the link to Krixtal's flagship. You're insane? The Overlord breathed. Your own species will revile you for this. Maybe, Chun acknowledged, but they'll be alive to do it. Can you say the same about yours? For nearly a minute, The three species stared at each other across the void human determination, facing Zephyrian pride and terror. Finally, Krikstal spoke. If we withdraw, how? Can we trust you won't trigger the weapon anyway? Because unlike your empire, we don't make war on civilians unless we have no choice. Withdraw your forces, evacuate your people, and you'll live to fight another day, somewhere far from human space. Another long silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ambassador Velther spoke. Overlord, we must consider the survival of our people. This war was your decision, not theirs. You dare question my authority? Krikstal whirled on his subordinate. I question the wisdom of allowing pride to destroy our entire civilization. Velther replied with quiet dignity. Admiral Chun, if we comply with your demands, what assurance do we have that humanity won't use this weapon against other systems? Chun considered the question carefully. The same assurance you gave to the civilizations you conquered none. But I will say this. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We defend ourselves and those who ask for our protection. We don't seek war, but we will finish any war brought to us. She paused, then added, The probe in your sun has a dead man's switch. If anything happens to Earth or our colonies, it activates automatically. Your species' survival now depends on our survival. Think of it as insurance. Krikstal's multiple eyes blazed with fury, but behind the rage, Chun could see the cold calculation of a leader who had suddenly realized he was utterly outmaneuvered. You have 53 minutes, Chun reminded him. The transmission cut off, leaving the human command center in tense silence. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then slowly, the Zephyrian fleet began to move. Admiral, reported the sensor. Operator, I'm reading engine activation from multiple Zephyrian vessels. They're withdrawing. One by one, the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, racing back toward their doomed homeworld. Within 40 minutes, the Sol system was clear of hostile forces for the first time in 3 days. Dr. Tanaka, Shun said quietly, transmit the final authorization code. The scientist's fingers hesitated over her console. Ma'am, once I send this, there's no taking it back. Send it. The signal flashed across space at the speed of light, carrying with it the death sentence of an entire star system. In 47 minutes, it would reach the probe. 18 minutes after that, the Zephyr system would become an expanding sphere of superheated plasma. Admiral, Webb said softly, we've just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Every species will know what we're capable of. Chun nodded, feeling the weight of billions of lives on her shoulders. Good. Maybe that will prevent the next. Zephyrian Empire from rising. As the hours passed, deep space monitors tracked the frantic evacuation efforts in the Zephyr system. Massive transport ships laden with refugees fled toward the outer rim, racing against time and physics. Not all would make it. There simply weren't enough ships, not enough time. But many would survive, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity, when pushed to the brink, chose to push back. When the star finally detonated, the shock wave was visible from 1,000 light-years away, a new, brilliant star that burned, briefly before fading to nothing. Where the Zephyrian Empire's heart had beaten for 10 millennia, only empty space remained. The galaxy took notice. Within weeks, delegations from dozens of species arrived at Earth, seeking either alliance or assurance that they would not share the Zephyrians' fate. Humanity, a young species that had emerged from a single small world, had announced their presence in a way that would never be forgotten. They had wanted war with humans. Now their star system no longer existed, and the galaxy knew that threatening humanity's survival was not just inadvisable, it was suicidal. Asterisk.